Good morning, good afternoon, good whatever time it is you're watching. I wanted to talk about something that I came up with a name for it, and that's what inspired me to make this video. And the engineer's folly. I think a lot of engineers go through this, more so the less experienced ones, but sometimes I've met some experienced engineers that they have this as well. It's where an engineer tries to design something and plan for every situation, but they don't take into account the intelligence of the person that's actually doing the assembling, the creation part of it, after the design part is done, when you hand off the design to whoever is manufacturing, fabricating, creating whatever the engineer designed. And I think this is where a lot of friction happens. The engineer will design something and try to plan for every little thing, or they will design every tiny little detail. They have the idea that, like, okay, I finish the design, I hand it off, boom, I thought of everything, and it comes from a good place. We try to make everything as well laid out as possible and easy to follow. Obviously, that isn't always the case, but I think engineers need to learn to trust the technicians, the mechanics, the fabricators, the machinists that are executing this design. What I mean by that is, instead of laying out every tiny little detail of a design, an engineer isn't an electrician. They might know a lot about electricity, they might have a degree in electrical engineering, but they're not the ones that are actually implementing the design 90-something% of the time. And so it's okay. In fact, I would argue that it's better to make design an iterative process. And they teach you this in school, like design's an iterative process. But when you get into industry, it seems like nobody still believes that. And is that my hair? Oh, it's a shadow. No one in industry still believes that. It is what it feels like. And so I'll be told to, like, hey, lay out every tiny little detail on this design so we can give it to such and such and they can make it. In my opinion, I should lay out a design to the extent that I know it'll work, and as soon as there's uncertainty that relates to the actual assembly or layout or the part of the design that the technician or mechanic or whoever they are to actually lay out and implement something, as soon as there's uncertainty there, that's when iteration should really begin, in my opinion. Obviously, you should be able to go back and correct the design if something's wrong, but this is where I think most of the time where iteration should begin. Get the design up to the point where you know, like, I know all this will work. We're good there. This box will fit in that spot. Cool. What about the drain plug? I don't know. Well, it'll probably work here, but we don't know what kind of tool the mechanic is going to use to do that, to operate that drain plug, remove it or replace it or whatever, or re-bore it or re-tap the threads. We don't know. And so we come up with this design, we hand it off to the mechanic, and we tell them, hey, I have this up to this point, but I want your input on what to do about this. And that doesn't seem to be what most engineers in industry do. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's pride or if they legitimately think that, like, hey, this is the best way to do it. I'm going to lay out every single little detail. If you're a mechanic or a fabricator or a machinist or a technician of some sort, I would love to hear in the comments. Or even if you're not, one of those, if you get something from an engineer, I want to know what the best way to get a design from an engineer is. A little background on me. My first job out of college, I was working with aircraft mechanics at a very small company. I think I was the only engineer with an actual degree in engineering. And my office was right next to the hangar. I would go out, crawl into the airplane, look at stuff, measure it, go back, make it in SolidWorks. But the one thing I did do that I didn't notice a lot of other engineers doing was when I would get the design to a point where I was like, okay, I think the mechanics will be able to fill in the gaps here. I would still go out and I would bring out my drawing and I'd say, hey, what do you think of this? Should I put these rivets here? Should this wiring pass through, go here? Is it going to get in the way of anything? And most of the time they'd be like, that's good, cool. But a lot of times they'd be like, no, there's actually a control cable that goes through here, and we had it removed, and that's why you didn't see it whenever you looked at the aircraft. So this needs to move over an inch or 3 inches, or you have to put it at a different, I think it's a frame station or floor station. It's a measurement on an aircraft that goes from the front to the back. And that was super good input, super valuable input that the mechanics were able to give me that prevented me from doing a lot of unnecessary rework, and it made it easier for them to install, and they liked me more because I wasn't an engineer that was just like, oh, I'll finish this design, blah, 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 install it, whatever. I feel like a lot of younger engineers don't give the technical or the implementation side personnel the respect they deserve, right? So they're intelligent people. Like you have to have a certain level of intelligence to do those things, right? And so I think as engineers we should put more trust in those personnel. Like they have experience, they work with stuff that we don't always work with, but we're designing for. And so that input is super, super valuable. I think one of the number one pieces of advice I could give new engineers is try to learn from the people you're designing for, or try to learn from the people that will be using your designs, because you'll get so much amazing hands-on knowledge, application knowledge that you wouldn't have got otherwise, unless you actually went to go work to do what they're doing, which most engineers won't. And so that's why it's so important. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because, I encounter it. It's not uncommon for engineers to want to do every tiny little detail before they actually know how it's going to be implemented. And it's kind of a pet peeve of mine at this point to be told, like, hey, do every tiny little detail before you pass it off. Like, I work directly with the person using my designs. So I can literally just walk over to their desk and be like, hey, I haven't filled this out yet, but here are the designs to like get you 80% of the way there. Let me know what the best way to do this part would be, the last 20%, and I'll put that in the design and finalize it. And that way they don't have to deal with my ignorance about how it's going to be installed. They give me important information that I wouldn't have known otherwise, maybe something that I wouldn't have thought about. And they respect you more because they know that you respect them, and it improves the relationship and decreases the friction between the engineers and the technical personnel. So that is the engineer's folly. It comes from a good place, trying to make sure everything is spick and span laid out, but I think it's more valuable to get input on the things you are not as familiar with. I will sign out with that. Be sure to be kind to someone today. I will see you next time. Peace. Good morning, good afternoon, or good whatever time it is you're watching. Be sure to be kind to someone today. Has this been annoying? Have I been popping my hand on the desk this whole time? If I have, sorry. Anyway, be sure to be kind to someone today. And I will see you tomorrow. Be sure to be kind to someone. Oh my God.